tell me honestly, if you don't stop these three behaviors, life slowly puts the brakes on without you realizing it. On the other hand, people who reach the highest levels of success, millionaires and billionaires included, live by the opposite rules. Now, let's start understanding these behaviors, so stay with me. Have you ever worked hard, stayed busy, did everything you were supposed to do and still felt stuck? Not tired, not lazy, just stuck. Here's the truth most people never hear. Success isn't missing from your life, it's being blocked. Blocked by habits that feel normal, blocked by thoughts that sound reasonable, blocked by patterns you've repeated for years without questioning, and today, that ends. Because there are three things, just three, that quietly destroy progress. They don't scream. And if you don't stop them, they will drain your energy, steal your confidence, and slow your momentum year after year. But once you see them, you'll never see your life the same way again. So lean in, because the third one is the reason most people quit right before their breakthrough. Number one, stop letting your past decide who you are. Let's go deeper. Because this is where most people get trapped. Not by lack of talent, not by lack of effort, but by invisible weight. Your past, not what happened, but what you decided it meant. That decision may have been made years ago, in a moment of stress, a moment of disappointment, a moment when you were tired, hurt, or unsure, and you didn't know it at the time, but that moment quietly became a rule. Here's another story. A young woman tried something new. She spoke up. She took a risk. And it didn't go well. No applause. No support, just silence. So she learned something, not consciously, but emotionally. Better stay quiet. Better not stand out. Better not try again. Years passed. She grew older, more capable. But her behavior stayed frozen in that moment. Not because she couldn't change, but because she never questioned the meaning she gave it. Let me ask you something that matters. How many of your current choices are reactions to an old moment? Think about that. Because most people think they're making free decisions. They're not. They're replaying a script. A script written by a younger version of themselves, with less experience, less perspective, less power. Yet they still obey it. Why? Because the mind wants safety more than expansion. It prefers familiar discomfort over unfamiliar growth. Familiar pain says, at least I know how this ends. Unfamiliar possibility says, what if I fail again? So the mind protects you. But protection isn't progress. And here's the emotional truth. You don't outgrow your past by waiting. You outgrow it by redefining it. Let me pause here and ask you directly, what label are you still wearing that no longer fits? The shy one, the bad with money one, the not confident one, the always struggling one. Who gave you that label? And more importantly, why are you still carrying it? Because labels shape behavior. And behavior shapes destiny. Another emotional peak right here. You don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your identity. So if your identity is anchored in the past, your future stays limited no matter how hard you work. That's why effort alone isn't enough. You must upgrade the story. Let me make this practical. Your past is not a life sentence. It's raw material. Every experience, good or bad, contains fuel. Fuel for wisdom, fuel for clarity, fuel for strength, but only if you decide to use it that way. Ask yourself this powerful question, what else could this experience mean? Not, why did this happen to me? But, how did this prepare me? That question alone shifts your posture, your energy changes, your voice changes, your choices change. And here's the moment most people miss. Confidence is not built by winning first. It's built by choosing who you are before results show up. That's the decision point. Every breakthrough begins with a decision. Not a perfect plan, not certainty, no approval. A decision. A decision to stop negotiating with an outdated story. A decision to say, that was then, this is now. So let me challenge you. What experience are you still using as proof that you should play small? What moment are you allowing to set your limits? Was it a rejection? A failure? Someone's opinion? And why does that moment get more authority than your potential? Sit with that. Because growth begins the second you stop asking, can I do this? And start asking, who do I choose to become? That question puts you back in control. Not tomorrow, not someday, now. And when you answer it, really answer it, something shifts. Your shoulders straighten, your breath deepens, your actions become bolder, not reckless, intentional. Because your future doesn't need permission from your past. It never did. And once you release that invisible weight, you move faster. You hesitate less. You stop over-explaining yourself. You act like someone who believes change is possible. That's when momentum starts, not because life suddenly gets easy, but because you stopped dragging yesterday into today. So I'll leave you with this. If you no longer let the past decide for you, what would you do next? And what's stopping you from choosing that right now? Number 2, stop consuming without creating now. Let's slow this down. Because this one hides in plain sight. Something subtle. Something almost everyone does. Something that feels harmless. Overconsumption. Information. Entertainment. Opinions. Endless noise. It feels productive. It feels like growth. It feels like progress. But it's not. Here's what usually happens. Someone wakes up and reaches for a screen, not because they decided to, because it's automatic. They scroll, they skim, they absorb, they learn a little, they watch a lot, they feel inspired for a moment. Then life takes over. Messages, tasks, distractions, the day ends, and nothing real was built, no progress made, no skill sharpened, no meaningful step taken, and slowly, quietly frustration grows. Not loud frustration, subtle frustration. The kind that says, I'm busy, but I'm not moving. Here's the emotional truth. Consumption without creation creates confusion. The mind gets full, but life stays empty. Let me ask you something that matters. How much of your energy is spent watching other people live their dreams? Be honest. How many plans have you thought about but never acted on? How many ideas have you saved but never started? Because there's a cost to constant intake. Your mind becomes crowded, your focus gets scattered, your confidence starts leaking. Why? Because confidence doesn't come from knowing. It comes from doing. Creation doesn't mean attention. It doesn't mean recognition. It doesn't mean being seen. Creation means producing something real. A skill you practice. A habit you build. A problem you solve. A better version of yourself you shape daily. Here's a powerful distinction. Consumers wait for motivation. Creators build momentum. And momentum changes identity. When you create, even imperfectly, you send a message to your mind, I am someone who acts. That message changes posture. It changes tone. It changes belief. But when you only consume, you delay decisions. You overthink. You compare your beginning to someone else's middle, and comparison drains courage. Another emotional peak right here. You don't feel stuck because you lack potential. You feel stuck because you're overloaded and underexpressed. Let that sink in. Your mind has ideas your life hasn't met yet, and the gap between them creates tension. So let me ask you directly, what would your life look like if you turned down the noise and turned up your output? What if you used information as fuel instead of entertainment? Because here's the truth most people miss. You don't need more information. You need more execution. Action creates clarity, not the other way around. Clarity doesn't come from thinking longer. It comes from moving sooner. Ask yourself this powerful question. What would change if I spent half the time building instead of watching? Not all the time, just half. What skill would grow? What project would finally start? What confidence would return? And here's another one. What would happen if I acted before I felt ready? Because readiness is built in motion, not before it. The fastest way to regain belief in yourself is to create something small today. Not something perfect, not something impressive, something real. One step, one decision, one piece of output. Write one page, practice one skill, make one improvement. That's it. Because momentum doesn't start big. It starts consistently. And once momentum begins, doubt gets quieter, focus gets sharper, energy increases. Not because life changed, but because you did. So let me leave you with this. If you stopped waiting to feel ready, what would you create today? And what's stopping you from starting now? Number 3, stop accepting average standards. Now this is the big one. This is where lives quietly settle. Not with failure, not with disaster, but with comfort, standards. Most people don't fail. They slowly accept less than they're capable of. Not all at once, little by little. They normalize exhaustion. They tolerate constant distraction. They excuse inconsistency. And over time, that behavior becomes identity. Let me ask you something directly. What are you allowing right now that's quietly draining your potential? Think about it. Because what you tolerate becomes your baseline. And your baseline decides your future. Here's the truth most people avoid. You don't get what you want in life. You get what you accept. Standards shape behavior. Behavior shapes results. Results shape identity, not goals. Goals are wishes, standards are rules, and rules run your life. Here's a story. Someone once promised themselves they'd change. New routine, new habits, new direction. The first few days felt strong. Then life got busy. They skipped one day, then another. Then it became normal. Not because they failed, but because their standards stayed the same. They didn't demand more from themselves, and nothing changed. That's how settling works. It doesn't announce itself. It sneaks in quietly. Let me hit an emotional peak here. Most people are not stuck. They're just comfortable enough to stay. Comfort feels safe, but it slowly shrinks you. Your energy drops. Your focus weakens. Your ambition softens. And one day you wake up wondering where your drive went. It didn't disappear. You lowered the standard. Now here's the shift. Raising your standards doesn't require perfection. It requires honesty. Honesty about what no longer works. Honesty about habits that drain you instead of strengthen you. Honesty about what you deserve. Ask yourself this. Where have I been negotiating with myself? Where have I been saying it's fine when it's not? Because every time you tolerate less, you train yourself to expect less. And expectation becomes reality. Another emotional peak right here. Motivation does not come first. Standards do. You don't wait to feel strong. You decide what's acceptable. You don't wait for confidence. You raise the bar. And confidence follows. When someone raises their standards, their life responds immediately. They speak with clarity. They move with intention. They choose with purpose. Not because they changed overnight, but because they stopped allowing what no longer served them. Let me ask you something powerful. What would change if you refused to settle one area of your life? Just one. Your health, your time, your focus, your daily habits. What if good enough was no longer enough? Because the moment you stop settling, you start expanding. Your energy increases. Your discipline strengthens. Your self-respect grows. And self-respect changes everything. Here's something to remember. Your standards teach people and yourself how to treat you. They set the tone for your life. So ask yourself honestly, what am I no longer willing to live with? What behavior ends today? What standard, if raised right now, would change everything? You don't need to fix everything. You don't need to overhaul your life. You need one clear line, one decision, one non-negotiable. Because the life you want doesn't begin with more effort. It begins with higher standards. And the moment you choose that, your future shifts. Final emotional peak. Let's bring it home. Because this is the moment that matters. Everything you've heard so far means nothing unless something changes now. If you want to succeed in life, 3 things must stop. Not someday, not when it feels comfortable. Now. Stop letting your past define you. Stop consuming without creating. Stop accepting average standards. That's it. No long checklist. No complicated system. Simple, but powerful. And here's the truth most people avoid. You already know what to do. The problem has never been awareness. It's been hesitation. Telling yourself you'll start later. But later is the story the mind tells to stay comfortable. Let me ask you something real. How long have you been preparing without moving? How many times have you felt this spark, then let it fade? Because success doesn't come from knowing more. It comes from deciding more. You don't need permission. You don't need approval. You don't need perfect timing. You need a decision, a clean decision, one that says, I'm done staying where I am. Another emotional peak right here. If nothing changes, nothing changes. Same routine, same results, same frustration. But the moment you choose one thing to stop, everything shifts. Not all at once, but immediately. Your energy changes. Your focus sharpens. Your actions align. Because clarity follows commitment. So I want you to pause for a moment, not scroll. Don't skip ahead. Pause. And ask yourself honestly, which one hit me the hardest? Was it the past you've been carrying? The time you've been consuming instead of creating? The standards you've been settling for? Be honest. Because honesty is where power starts. Here's another question that matters. What has this pattern been costing you? Time, confidence, opportunities, peace of mind? And how much longer are you willing to pay that price? Another emotional rise here. You don't need to fix your whole life today. You need one brave choice. One line in the sand. One thing that ends now. Because momentum doesn't come from massive change. It comes from decisive action. Small, intentional, consistent. And once you take that step, you remind yourself who's in control. Not the past, not distractions, not comfort. You. So let me ask you one final question. If you choose to act like the person you know you can become, what would you do next? Not tomorrow, not next week, right now. Because this moment will pass. But the decision you make in it can change everything. Choose wisely. And choose now. Thank you for listening. And don't forget to like and subscribe.